So for more on what the latest Trump tariffs mean for global trade, let's speak with Frank Lavin. He's visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford. He's also former undersecretary for international trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce. Frank, thank you very much for joining us, on this, historic day. So I guess my first question would be, how are you expecting America's trading partners to react once they get over the shock? I mean, we heard the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, telling CNN and Fox, sit back, don't do anything, take a deep breath, don't immediately retaliate. Anthony Albanese apparently doing just that. But is that going to be the kind of reaction you're expecting from everyone else?
I thought the Australian Prime Minister's response was a very thoughtful response because remember his premise that the immediate cost will be paid by the Americans. So the American consumers, American businesses will have their lives disrupted and inflation will be spurred up a bit in the United States. So the point is there's no need for a foreigner to pile onto that bad news. Let the bad news be absorbed by the Americans and think about that. Now, Canada's got its own situation because they have an election coming up. So I think they have more of an impetus to jump into it. But I think most other countries will follow Australia's comments and be a bit measured, a bit reserved in any kind of retaliation.
Frank, businesses and investors have been asking for certainty. So does this plan address that, you think, or does it simply raise even more questions and even more uncertainty?
I missed the first word. The investors asked for what, please?
Certainty.
Certainty. I think this is a calamity for certainty and predictability, meaning the president's stated goal of reshoring, I think, is not likely to be met because these are long-term capital investments that require years of certainty, which is not in the picture. So I think it will freeze corporate behavior, freeze decision-making. There might be an odd plant here or there that is ready to expand a bit, but in general, I can't see this being a job creator in the United States. It's more likely to be a job destroyer in the U.S.
Well, the White House says the tariffs will stay until threat is resolved or mitigated. I mean, what sort of factors or conditions would ultimately lead to the removal of these tariffs?
Well, he might get some concession from some countries. There's got to be, I think, a bit of pain on both sides, and this to be absorbed on both sides. And there might be some willingness in Europe, for example, to say, tell us the 2 or 3 things you want us to move on. So there might be some minor movements, but I can't see Europe responding in large measure to what Trump's doing, and I can't see China responding at all. So I don't see a lot of good news at the end of this.
Speaking of minor movements, given Trump's history of leaving room to negotiate, changing his mind, could there be significant U-turns or sort of rollback mid-implementation if the economic outcomes are not as expected?
Julie, I think that's a more likely scenario, that he gets a small percentage of what he's hoping to get, but he declares victory because there's so much unhappiness in the U.S. The stock market's off, inflation is up. So he just says, I got what I wanted, even though maybe he got 5% of what he wanted, and he just declares victory and the whole thing's over. That might be the best case scenario.
And Frank, I mean, in the off chance this radical plan, as many people are calling it, actually works and reorders global trade as we know it, I mean, what will this reordering look like? Do you have an idea? Can you paint us a picture?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think the second order effects, Arnold, are going to be potentially harmful to the U.S. as well, because the message the U.S. is sending to major trading partners is don't count on us. And you need to find your own path. You need to find other friends and partners that don't include us, since we're now the least predictable trading partner. So it might incentivize Europe to work more closely with Japan, or Japan and Korea to work more closely with China, for example. So it might have second order effects that are very harmful to U.S. trading interests.
Yeah, on that point, Frank, Trump's trade measures and tariff policies have led to strained relations with U.S. allies like Canada and the EU. What could this mean for geopolitical balance? Could the U.S. risk further alienating key allies and, in turn, strengthening its economic and political rivals like China?
Well, this move was entirely initiated by the United States. So I think the United States has to bear the brunt of the criticism or negative consequences from this move. I don't think China replaces the U.S. or supplants the U.S., But I think at the margin, the message to Brussels, the message to Ottawa, the message to Canberra is the United States is maybe not as reliable a partner as you previously thought. We saw the Australian Prime Minister just say, this is not the work of a friend. This is not how people respect each other, treat each other. So there's a little bit of deterioration in the broader political relationship because of this move.
And finally, Frank, how long do you think President Trump is going to hold out? I mean, when will he be convinced that this plan may not work? I mean, we've seen Wall Street's, losses. We've seen weak consumer sentiment data. Economists have been sounding the alarm, but that hasn't worked so far. What's going to be something that may actually convince him that this is the wrong move?
I'll tell you what, Arnold, I think if this goes more than 30 days, we're going to see an impact in the unemployment numbers. And then you have broad discontent in the United States, meaning if it's a little bit of pain, a little bit of dislocation for a few weeks, that might be acceptable. But if it goes on for more than a few weeks and the unemployment numbers start trickling up, I think President Trump will pay a price for this politically.
Okay, appreciate your insight this morning, Frank. Thank you. Frank Lavin, a visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution, Stanford University, and former undersecretary for international trade at the U.S. Commerce Department. Thank you.